unless you are asked to speak or ask a question. There's no need to have your video on during the webinar, but please put your video on when you're asking a question. And we will be taking questions at the end of all the presentations. So I will be asking you to put your question in the chat function at the bottom of your screen and write the question that you wish to ask. And then at the end of the presentations, if your question is selected, you'll be invited to ask it directly. When invited to ask a question, please unmute yourself and switch on your video and state your name and where you are from. Thank you. Okay, the next, just to give you a sense of what we're doing today, we're starting off with a presentation by Professor Lin Ang from the UCL IOE and Professor Kazuku Sumatsu from Tohoku University. And they have been working together with other colleagues looking at the issues that we're discussing today. Then we will have a panel discussion with various people from Japan and also from the UK. So I will, if I could have the next slide, please. What we're doing is I wanted just before I pass on to Lynn and my other colleagues, I just want to talk about why we think inclusive and supportive research cultures are so important and what our working definition is of a inclusive and supportive research culture. And we're using the definition used by the Royal Society. And we think it's really important because it affects who undertakes research, it affects the sort of research that is done, and it reflects how research is communicated. In other words, from our standpoint, inclusive and supportive research cultures underpin all research that we undertake. So without further ado, I want to pass over to Lin Ang, who is Pro-Director and Vice Dean of Research at UCL Institute of Education, and to Professor Kazuku Sumatsu, who is Associate Executive Vice President for International Affairs and Deputy Director of the Global Learning Center at Tohoku University. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claire. And before I begin, just a practical note. The presentation slides, are they on? I can't quite see them. Okay, brilliant.
Can we go on? Can we move them on, please? Kate? Keep going.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Right. So thank you very much, Claire, and to everyone for being here. It is my absolute pleasure and delight to be here on this webinar today. And I just wanted to start by saying this whole webinar is based on a joint project, very much a collaborative project between UCL and Tohoku University. And I know I speak on behalf of the UK team who are all here today to say it's been an amazing experience and a privilege to be working with the team at Tohoku University, led by my close collaborator, Professor Kazuko Sumatsu, who is the co-lead of this project, and of course also Professor Yamaguchi, and to thank them for their support on this project. And I just wanted to say that this project is about delivering research excellence within an inclusive, diverse, and equitable research culture and environment. And we started off as having discussion around the differences and also the similarities between our institution. And the overall aim of our project is really to bring together a cross-cultural, a cross-institutional network of scholars, researchers, senior academic leads, and professional service leaders to share best practice on what works, what we know works or does not work in tackling those issues around equality, diversity, and inclusion, and the research environment and research culture challenges, and also opportunities. And we firmly believe that any meaningful and impactful efforts to really create an inclusive, enabling higher education institution that is truly diverse and inclusive will need to be centered around shared learnings, collaboration, and knowledge exchange to inform change and to inform new knowledge about policies and practice in higher education. So that was really very much the impetus and the aims of our project, and the reason that has really sparked this cross-institutional collaboration. So I just want to also say a note that one of the really exciting parts of the project is learning from each other and also recognizing the very different cultural contexts that we work in Japan and also in the UK. And one example is EDI, the term EDI, that's very synonymous for us in the UK, equality, diversity, and inclusion, is very much also at the heart of the Tohoku University. But of course, there's a slight terminology difference, and that's one of the things that we've been learning about, the different terminologies. And of course, in Japan, the phrase DEI, diversity, equality, and inclusion, is synonymous with EDI. So we'll be using these two terms interchangeably throughout our project and in this webinar. And as I said, it's very much a collaboration, and part of that is about learning from each other, but also learning from the evidence base. So in terms of that collaboration, what we have done in the last 8 months is to undertake a joint scoping review, looking at surveys at UCL and Tohoku University in our research community's perspective on the types of research culture environment that colleagues and scholars and researchers and academics are working in. And then to think about the workshops, partnership engagement events that we are putting together. And this webinar is a culmination of one example of many events that we'll be doing together, and developing collaborative research platforms and tools. So this, in many ways, is very much a journey and a long journey that I know UCL and Tohoku University will be working on together. So the next slide, please. Thank you, Kate. So I'm going to talk now just very briefly about the scoping review that we did together as a project team, and just starting from the UK perspective, and then Kazuko will talk about the Tohoku and Japanese perspective. So one of the key things that we started with, a key step in the project, is to do a scoping review, because we very much wanted the project to be evidence-based, to be drawing from some of the literature around what it means to create and develop an enabling and supportive research culture. And in the UK, we did a defined specific contained scoping review, looking at some of the grey literature, some of the institutional strategy reports that we know of. And these were some of the key themes or headlines that we identified. Some of the barriers, including time pressures. We do know that higher education can be a very intensive working environment in terms of multiple job roles. Academics or researchers do not only just teach or do research, they do all of that, and they also contribute a lot to the institution. We know there are funding pressures because of external funding pressure, and also in terms of very sadly, we do know that there have been reports of harassment and discrimination. And the question for us is, what can we do to put in more enabling and supportive policies to tackle that? And also a barrier in terms of limited institutional funding and commitment, that we can do more and we must do more. Having said that, there are also opportunities and enablers that we identified from the scoping review that we've done. A lot of the literature when reports out there has talked about how reward and recognition, being able to reward colleagues and reward staff in recognizing the important, impactful research that they've done, is really important. and how having role models and representation with institutional commitment is really important, and having clear career trajectory pathways that our early mid-career researchers could then work towards is also really important, so that they will be able to also be promoted and be supported in being promoted through that academic ladder. So these is just a snapshot of the scoping review that we did from some of the institutional corporate strategy papers, grey literature that we undertook from the UK perspective and the UK literature. And I'm now going to pass over to my colleague, Professor Kazuko Suwatsu, to talk about the scoping review and from a Japanese perspective. Thank you. Over to you, Kazuko.
Okay, great, Lynn. Thank you so much. And then thank you, everyone, for being here with us. So I'd like well, let me start with what I'm trying to cover. First, I'd like to give you an overview of the development of DEI in higher education in Japan by mainly looking at related policies. And it'll be a great, well, a very quick review, but I hope you'll be able to catch an overview of the DEI or EDI related policies in higher education, and also get a sense of differences in approaches to DEI between UK and Japan. Then I'd like to present some findings of our keyword search analysis of existing literature, which will hopefully contribute to a further discussion about DEI in research culture. The next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so this slide shows the development of DEI-related policies in laws in Japan. As you can see, there has been a synthesis of two main streams. One emerged from gender equality, and the other from the idea that as Japan's birth rate is drastically declining, it is essential to ensure the quality and quantity of human resources, especially in science, technology, and innovation. So, and then the underlying philosophy here is that we need to provide an environment to attract more talents, and also that the diversity is a catalyst for innovation. In this stream, policies and funding schemes were organized in a way to attract researchers with keywords of young in their career, and female and international. And then a recent trend shown in the bottom square is that the focus is placed more on inclusiveness and diversity, of course, including women. I will give you an example. A large-scale university internationalization project, such as the Top Global University Project, has set KPIs and numerical targets for, of course, international researchers and students. But interestingly, KPI for female faculty and researchers are also included. So from these policies, it is clear that universities are encouraged to welcome people from diverse cultural backgrounds in order to be globally competitive. Okay, so the next two slides are the KPIs, just to get an idea of this. So Kate, can you go to the keyword search slide? Thank you. Okay, great. This is it. Okay, so now I'd like to briefly show the results of keyword search done in collaboration with my Tohoku colleagues, Yuki Watabe and Midori Kojima. As you can see from this, the term DEI does not frequently appear in existing literature of higher education, while relatively a large number of literature is available on the term young researchers in Korea, and female researchers and foreign researchers. So these are the three terms that were very, visible. And it was also found that the literature on research culture, which is the theme of today's roundtable, was very limited. So the conclusion, if you can go to the conclusion, Kate. Okay, so these are some of the findings. So you can just go through it later on. All right. So it was unfortunate that DEI and research culture in Japanese higher education have not yet been the subject of much research, though policies and laws are coming to the shape to promote DEI. And we have also reached research culture in Japanese higher education, which Professor Yamaguchi will discuss later. DEI needs to be definitely discussed more in the context of research environment and research culture. The positive side, however, as Lynn has mentioned, that there's a great potential in ongoing UCL Tohoku joint research, and we look forward to further development and collaborations. Back to Lynn.
It's fantastic and absolutely to time. So thank you very much indeed. I now have great pleasure in introducing Professor Masahiro Yamaguchi, who will be talking again about the situation in Japan. And that will be followed, and he is the Vice President for Education Reform and Global Engagement. He's director of Advanced Graduate School and the director of the Global Learning Center and the Center for Culture and Language Education in the Institute of for Excellence in Higher Education. So he has a very important role to play at Kazuku's university, and we will then move on after he has presented issues affecting his university. We will then move on to people who are actually at the coalface. So firstly, there is Frances Morton, who works for something called the ESRC, which is the major funding body in the UK for social science research. And I'm very happy to say I've been a beneficiary of it. And Frances is Deputy Director of Research Talent Development at the ESRC. So she has to control people like me to make sure that we are instituting EDI policies. And then we have Emma Todd and Mary Assad, both of whom work for UCL, and both of whom have more administrative roles as against research roles. Emma is Director of Research Culture at UCL. Mary is a change manager in research culture at UCL, and they are concerned about how they change the atmosphere and the culture and the practices within UCL so that we practitioners and researchers and the institute has a more inclusive practices. So can we start with you, Professor? Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the very kind introduction. So then my name is Masahiro Yamaguchi and Vice President of Tokyo University. As a member of the university leadership team, I'd like to explain what our university intends to do in terms of research culture and EDI. But before doing that, I'd like to say just a few words about who we are and what we do. Our university was established in 1907 as the third national university in Japan with the three principles of research first, open doors, and practice orientation. We are proud to say that Tohoku University is the first university in Japan to admit three female students in the year 1913, despite strong opposition from the Ministry of Education at that time. So the diversity and inclusion are, in a sense, embedded in our DNA, and our university shares the same values as University College London. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you. Recently, the Japanese government launched a new initiative called Universities for International Research Excellence to strengthen research competitiveness and promote innovation. This initiative will provide substantial financial support to a very limited number of selected universities for up to 25 years. We are now in the first year selection cycle. 10 universities applied, and only Tohoku University is the remaining candidate. I hope that we are very close to the official approval, and we'll hear good news very soon. Anyway, the schematic view of Tohoku University plan is given here, and bottom line is that we'll make a systematic reforms based on three commitment, talent, impact, talent, and change. So next slide, please. Okay, one of the highlights of the system reform is a restructuring of the research system. Traditionally, Tohoku University, as well as many other Japanese universities, adopt this hierarchical research system called Koza system. This hierarchical system works very well when we can clearly identify the research targets. And I also think that this traditional system is somewhat related to the homogeneity of academia in Japan, which is dominated by men, Japanese, and senior people. However, this system doesn't work in the current era of VUCA. So we want to transform our research system into a flat one, namely the unit-based system given on the right-hand side. This system provides equal leadership opportunities for all researchers as independent principal investigators. It also promotes independence of early career researchers. This system will increase the diversity of researchers with an emphasis on the female, international, and early career researchers. We believe that this restructuring of the research system will increase the research diversity and thus the research competitiveness. So next slide, please. Let me here briefly mention the development of DEI at Tohoku University. The Committee Office and Center for the Gender Equality were established at the beginning of this century, long after the first female students were admitted in the year 1913. Then in 2019, Human Resource Strategic Meeting led by the Provost was launched. And in the year 2022, Tohoku University announced a Declaration of Diversity, Equality, and Inclusion, DEI. Next slide, please. And this is the last one. With this advancement of the DEI in mind, I'd like to say some words about DEI in the new flat research system. In our plan, this issue will be managed by the newly established Human Capital Management Division. Here, the DEI promotion is one of the core strategies that will guide the actual implementation on the management side. I hope that this kind of mechanism will transform the DEI for the institutional purpose into the DEI for the individual well-being. That's all. Thank you very much for your attention.
Well, thank you very much. Whoops, there you go. There was my clock telling me that you're just, that's marvelous to time. So can we move on? Francis, if you'd like to take the stage.
Thank you very much, Claire.
Great.
It's lovely to be here and learn about these exciting and very important projects, as well as be able to contribute to the discussion. So just to give a bit of background, as Claire said, ESRC is the biggest funder of social science research, but it sits within the broader UK research and innovation public body. And importantly, we try to embed inclusive culture through everything we do as a funder, an employer, a leader, and a partner. So just to give you a sense of scale, we invest over 8 billion each year in research and innovation, and we recognise that people are very much at the heart of this research and innovation system. We have a highly talented, creative, and skilled research and innovation workforce in the UK. So that's why EDI is integral to UKRI's vision and its mission to ensure that inclusive research and innovation system, and including and valuing a broad range, diverse range of people and talent to help us achieve the extraordinary potential of research and innovation. So at a UKRI-wide level, we have implemented an EDI strategy to ensure that that happens, and that's very much about how we foster that world-class research and innovation system, and how we include and support that diversity of people and ideas through our funding and partnerships. And one way that we've done that is through the introduction of a people and teams action plan. So recognising the shared challenges faced by researcher and technician communities across our higher education system and beyond. And we've developed a shared set of actions to promote culture change, to address issues relating to the working culture, the research environment, and how researchers can access the professional and development support that they need throughout their career. And then specifically within ESRC, one area I just wanted to flag is our funding, using our funding levers to create an inclusive research culture is through supporting the development of an evidence base. I mean, we all know how integral EDI is and how important it is, but it gives us that benchmark against which we can set targets for ourselves to improve. So ESRC has funded several EDI initiatives over the last few years, including an EDI caucus in partnership with the British Academy. So looking at researchers' lived experience, researchers that face barriers in their career and try to implement the best interventions for that. And we've also worked in partnership with the Academy of Social Sciences on a more disciplinary level. But I think what's most important is how we embed EDI throughout research careers, and we very much take a life course approach, recognising that researchers will recognise different barriers, they will experience different barriers at different stages, and considering those more non-linear careers, different entry and exit points, especially related to, for example, gender equality and racial equality as well. So we've used our funding levers to do things like ensure that an EDI strategy is a mandatory part of our doctoral training partnerships funding, and that we monitor that throughout the cycle of the funding. We've also introduced a pilot summer research experience replacement to ensure that the barriers can be removed for different groups of students. We've also introduced postdoctoral fellowship schemes to support those in a critical transition period from doctoral into a wider research career, and also new investigators grants with that transition to independent research stage, and recognising the diversity of individual career paths. And we're also looking at research leadership and leadership amongst teams and how we can take that inclusive and whole career perspective. So some examples are development of postdoctoral fellow development programmes. We're piloting a new research leader network for mid and senior researchers as well. And we do have our own ESRC EDI plan, which focuses, as I said, our role as an employer as much as a funder, and ensuring that we have the right environment within our own council and we can role model that good practice. And we're actually reviewing that at the moment, and we monitor and implement that, and we do work in consultation with the research community to understand the types of changes that we should be implementing to ensure that more supportive and inclusive research culture.
Right. Well, thank you very much indeed. Whoops, there we go.
Perfect timing.
Perfect timing. So can we move on, please, to other people at the coalface trying to do this and get their hands dirty and trying to cajole people like me and other colleagues at UCL. So over to you, Emma and Mary. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claire. And thank you for inviting us today. I think we've already established that enhancing research culture is certainly a hot topic in the UK and in particular for universities. And within that, increasing equity, diversity, inclusion is obviously a critical element. Can I have the next slide, please? So in universities, we need to take action. We need to do that to make our research culture more inclusive. But just as important is the way that we go about doing it. At UCL, we've developed a shared vision in partnership with our research community and a roadmap that outlines how we'll achieve that vision. We use surveys, focus groups, and interviews with the research community to shape our approach. And the result of that consultation was this vision of a fair, collaborative, and inclusive research environment that facilitates excellence and where we support one another to succeed. Next slide, please. And the other output was the Research Culture Roadmap, which includes 5 themes captured on this slide and 3 enablers. These are all designed to help deliver on our vision, and they include areas where clear improvements are needed, as well as areas of strength that we think we can build on. So touching on the way we do research in terms of openness and integrity in our research and innovation, but also looking at the careers of staff within our research community, researchers, but also technical staff and other staff who contribute massively to the research endeavour. Each theme has a series of more specific goals underneath it, which give a flavour of the barriers and enablers that we've identified in achieving our vision. And if you're interested, you can read more about that online. I'll draw attention to 2 key things at the moment, just to say that equity, diversity and inclusion considerations run through everything that we do, as they should, but they are also captured as a specific goal under theme 5, supportive and inclusive environment. And partnership is mentioned as a key enabler. That's whether it's internally with our research community or externally with peers in the UK and beyond who are facing similar challenges. So really happy to be here to support the partnership with esteemed colleagues at Tohoku University. Next slide, please. So as a strategy, the roadmap is great, but alone it risks being just a pretty and colourful document. How we operationalise it is absolutely critical. Here is a set of principles on the left-hand side of the slide. I won't read through all of them, but I will touch on the first 2, which I think are the most important in the context of this conversation. And the first is that this is a shared, I'm saying here institutional endeavour, but actually I would say, it's a shared endeavour across our research innovation ecosystem. And it is something that we must co-create with our research community. The work of my team at UCL is split into 3 areas, illustrated by the pyramid on the right. Yes, we deliver change and run projects from the team. And yes, we're responsible for communicating what we're doing internally and externally, which are the top 2 elements of the pyramid. But the foundation of what we do, the bottom of the pyramid, is to catalyse change across the institution and hopefully reaching beyond UCL. This is about activating our research community in its entirety as change agents. And it's about actively seeking out a range of different voices to shape our work. We hope to, in this way, create an inclusive movement that goes far beyond what my small individual central team can do at UCL alone. Next slide, please. One of the ways that we're ensuring inclusive decision-making is by really carefully designing our governance structures. So we have a programme board, which is a normal practice, standard practice, that has strategic oversight of our work and feeds into UCL's formal governance structures. But we also have the community steering group, which is the voice of our research community at the heart of our decision making. And Mary, who has led the constitution of this important group, is going to tell you a little bit more about it.
Can you start bringing things to a close? Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Yes, so I think we're going to have to whiz through these because of the time. But just as a very brief overview, that we created the community steering group, which is basically made up of a cross-section of our research culture community to help to support the research culture roadmap. There are other slides in there, and
we've got a bit of time, so you do.
We do? Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, great. Fab. Okay, so yes, if you could go to the next slide, please. Just to show you the roles that we have on board, and it was created in a fair process. So when we did the call out for nominations, we ensured that we had an EDI panelist on board with us as well. And we have our fabulous chair, Dr. Natalie Marchant, who is Associate Professor in Brain Sciences. Again, it was important that they were part of the community to represent that as well. We had a huge amount of submissions for membership. We expected about 40 and have about 200. We didn't want to lose them, so we retained the core members who are part of all the meetings, and the pool members will be part of discussions and input when their areas align. And you can see there the sponsors that we have as well, our provost and Emma Todd, and it's important for that active and visible sponsorship as well. If you could move to the next slide, please. This also gives an overview of us trying to ensure that all of the faculties are represented. So when we were picking the core members, every single faculty has a representation, and some of the professional services as well. We also wanted to make sure that different types of roles, grades, and disciplines were covered as well, to really have that inclusive voice feeding back to us from their community and their area. Next slide, please. This is what we refer to as our change agent network now, our champions, if you like. A very similar role to the CSG. So we want them to feed into the program board, our research culture program board, have that bi-directional feedback, be the eyes and the ears on the ground for us, raise issues early, let us know what's going on. To champion our roadmap, but also to champion areas of opportunities that might be missed, as UCL is so vast. It's a really important role, and to role model good behaviours. Next slide, please. So that's a quick snapshot. We have a lot of activities that have been happening, but just to highlight, one of the biggest things that has come out of this is having that feedback in breakout rooms from the community, and letting us know what's happening at a grassroots level, and then ensuring for next steps that we're creating those areas where they can come together and we can support peer-to-peer networking and opportunities, and also bring in guest speakers from across UCL and outside in relation to EDI and other areas that they may not have been aware of, to help support that. But yes, it feels like we're in the start of something very exciting to create a better inclusive research culture together. Final slide. And this is just for reading afterwards. We've added some links for our research culture web pages and various projects and papers. Thank you.
Well, thank you too, Mary. That's absolutely brilliant, and thank all the speakers for really sticking to time. So now it's a time where you can ask us questions, and if you could please put your question in the chat function and write out the question you wish to ask. Then you'll be, I'll invite you to ask your question. And when you're asked, when you're invited to ask a question, please unmute yourself and switch on your video and state your name and where you're from. We already have a couple of questions. So let's start off with question from Adriana, who obviously has some very interesting experience in the Japanese context, and then followed by Jim. So please, Adriana, and I think at this stage, anybody who feels they'd like to address the question to chip in. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Adriana.
Thanks for having me. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Tell us where you're from.
Yes. Well, I am in Japan, so good evening to those of you on this side of the woods. I've been at Saitama University in the Kanto region for the past 18 years, and I have been in Japan for 25. My experience in higher education, and that's where my question comes in, has a lot to do with the lack of administrative support for teaching and research, in particular for foreign females, and the lack of inclusion. I mean, a lot of talk, and we have all been involved in this, especially those of us who are fluent in Japanese. We have been involved in trying to change things over the years, but a lot of it has stayed in the talk area, and very little has been done. So I'm really interested in what's going on with research at Tohoku University and UCLA when it comes to analyzing the lack of administrative structure, support, and leads. Any kind of clues you can give us about what you're doing that could help serve as a model for other national universities, we would appreciate that very much. If you have not included the issue of administration or the lack of it, why not? Would you be interested? And yeah, any feedback, any input would be much appreciated. Thank you.
So let's start off with my Japanese colleagues. Kazuku, would you like to, and Masahiro, would you like to address that question?
Yeah, maybe Masahiro, and I'd like to say something about that. And
Please.
well, actually, I'm not a researcher in that field, but I'm taking care of that part. I mean, the internationalization of the organization. So I agree that in particular, the support from the administrative staff is lacking in many of the Japanese universities, and we are aware of that part. So quite recently, what we did is that to make the international support center, establish a kind of international support center for taking care of all the things for the international scholars as well as international students. How to settle down, how to come to Japan, and how to settle down. And if you have some problem in the living here, then I will consult you. That's one thing. And another thing is the language. Language is another problem. And so that we are trying to make a bilingual environment, complete bilingual environment. So far, we succeeded in doing that in the document, in particular, made with the help of AI, indeed, DeepL and other methodology, but good. And comprehensive and complete comprehensive internationalization is a kind of target in our project, indeed. Thank you very much for asking the question. Thank you.
Kazuko, do you want to add anything?
Well, actually, the new funding, as Professor Yamaguchi has mentioned, we are the only finalist. So in that new project, what we are trying to do is to increase the number of administrative staff as well as assistants to help researchers, including international researchers. So we understand that this is the huge in the area of in the area that we need to improve. So we are actually kind of looking forward to this new development, and we'd like to disseminate this as a role model to other national university and in private universities in Japan.
Great, thank you. Does anybody else from the panel or elsewhere want to add? If not, we'll go on to the next question. Okay, Jim, would you like to turn on your video and ask your question? Thank you.
Thank you, Clara. Hi, and thank you, everyone. I'm Professor Jim McKinley. I'm in the UCL Center for Applied Linguistics and also UCL Center for Higher Education Studies. Earlier this week, I was at Tohoku University on Monday and Tuesday, and it was wonderful to meet with people in the Center for Brain and Cognition Studies. There, I was talking about the situation for Tohoku University expanding their English medium taught programs and looking at particular issues related to the kind of support provided for instructors and for students in those programs, recognizing that Tohoku University has a kind of broad international representation in their student body, depending on the programs, and trying to kind of deal with those differences. So it's something that I'm kind of interested in exploring further to see how it kind of fits into the areas of interest in this kind of strategic partnership between UCL and Tohoku. But I just have to say, I was really interested in Adriana's question and the discussion that you just had about that, because I work in the area of the teaching research nexus in higher education in UK higher education, and I can see some opportunities to make some connections there, Adriana, as well. So just let me know if we can talk about that extension. But yeah, English medium instruction. I know Tohoku is one of the partner universities in the Top Global Universities project funded by the Ministry of Education in Japan. And I'm wondering about the developments there and if there is interest in the kind of work involved in linguistic support for people involved in those English taught programs. Thank you.
So would our Japanese colleagues like to?
Thank you. Yes,
Maybe
Professor
again,
Yamaguchi,
I
thank
should
you.
talk. Jim, thank you very much for your proposal. I'm very happy to hear about that. This is our one actually in the project we are we want to increase the number of international students. For this purpose, we want to increase courses taught in English so that the instruction or the kind of professional development in that direction is very, very important. We recognize that we are talking about that. And so that I'm very happy to hear that you would support us.
And do you think there should be more that should be doing, Jim? I mean, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah. So, well, it's interesting. So I met some of the people who are involved in some of the expansion programs at Tohoku in terms of kind of planning curriculum for providing the support that students will need. But there wasn't a lot of discussion about supporting international faculty. And I think there is also just, I don't know, a lot of space to be able to kind of build on the work that we've been doing. So I should say I'm also a part of the EMI Oxford Research Group at the University of Oxford. And so there we've done quite a lot of collective work in Japanese higher education as well as China, higher education in China. And just this kind of, kind of wide expansion that's happening. People are looking to specific institutions, so particularly like Tohoku, where the funding is going from the Ministry of Education to see what's happening and kind of what's developing there. So that's why I was interested in finding out more about what the kind of broader understanding is around the expansion of English taught programs at the university. I don't know, Professor Suematsu, if you wanted to say anything about that.
Yeah, actually, as Professor Yamaguchi said, we would like to increase the number of English courses, both at the undergraduate and graduate level. So we'd like to welcome your proposal. And then it's just great to be able to meet you here. So let's continue our discussions.
Great, thank you.
Good. Okay, the next question is from Yiran. Can you ask your question, please?
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, fantastic, thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Yiran, and I'm from University of Cambridge. I'm a fourth-year PhD student. My research is about we call it academic ecosystem in China, and I do a comparison between the Chinese case and the UK case. So as far as I understand, research culture is a hot topic in UK at present because of the REF 2029's increasing weights on the people, culture, and the environment indicators. It is now 25% of the total weighting. So, but I didn't see any of these kind of government-led research or university evaluation system mentioned by our Japanese part. So if my understanding is correct, I'm wondering, is there any of this kind of evaluation project nationwide or university evaluation assessment going in Japan? And how does it influence or say shape the research culture in Japan's universities? Thank you very much.
Okay, back to my Japanese colleagues.
again. I
Yeah,
should
again.
say some
Well,
words, and,
I'm gonna bring
well,
in some of the others in a
yeah,
minute.
actually, as far as I know, there is no such. First of all, I should say that the word research culture is not very popular in Japan, and we are talking about something. I mean, some content which is similar to the research culture, but the word is not popular in Japan, as far as I know, and actually no such a comprehensive. I mean let's say the policy about that. But each of them, for instance, the approach to the gender balance or the approach to the international faculty members or something like that, I think that and encourage young researchers. These are the individually done. That's I think that's kind of situation.
Okay. Emma, you want to comment on this?
Yes, I just wanted to say from the UK side, REF has certainly become a very helpful driver for our work on research culture, but it's not where this work started. So it's helpful, but you don't have to have, this massive financial and reputational driver. The work on research culture and the kind of discussion in the sector started many, many years before that. With reports, in particular, one that was led by Wellcome, that really shone a light on the fact that whilst we were, as a sector, able to maintain the quality of our research, it was felt that it was at the expense of the individual well-being of the members of the research community. And that was the initial driver of the work. So it was about how can we create the best conditions, and then from an institutional perspective, the important drivers were how do we retain talent? How do we continue to attract the best researchers and research support staff from around the world? And in that way, how can we sustain research excellence? So that's where it started. I started working in this space in 2021. And since then, funders, as Francis has mentioned, have made this more of a priority. So if you're bidding for funding from Wellcome or from the UK Research Institutes, then you are going to be asked to give evidence of how you and your institution are supporting a healthy and inclusive research culture. And then, of course, we've got the biggie, which is REF 2029. But the work that we're doing at UCL, we're really at pains to say is driven by, where it started. It's about creating the right conditions. It's not about ticking a box for REF, although it's a very helpful lever. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Good. Lynn, I think you'd like to come in on it, and then Francis. So Lynn, over to you.
Thank you very much, Claire, and I'll make this very brief. And I just really wanted to echo my colleague Emma and the team to say I absolutely endorse that. And just as a preamble to our international audience, the REF stands for the Research Excellence Framework, and it's the national assessment system in the UK where the government has put in place to assess institutions in terms of the research that we do. And we are assessed in 3 areas: the environment, which is where research environment and culture comes in, outputs and impact. So those are the 3 categories. I just wanted to make 2 very quick points, but important points. I think firstly, to echo what Emma said about how our efforts in developing a research or creating a enabling and inclusive research culture is very much a collective responsibility. And it's not just because we want to do well in an exam in the UK, as it were, but it is really about supporting our fellow colleagues. All of us here who are academics and researchers absolutely understand what that journey is like when we started our career as an early career researcher. So we need to be able to support the next generation of researchers. And I think that's our collective responsibility as institutions and as a society. And then the second point to make is it's not just also about the institutions, it is about our responsibility as colleagues in the science for the discipline of science. Science relies on having groundbreaking research, groundbreaking discoveries, great ideas, and that relies on new generation of researchers coming up with the new discovery, working in that enabling environment. And so we need to support them, not just for the institutions, not just for individuals, but also for the discipline, as it were, to improve the human race. So I think that big picture is really important. So thank you, Claire.
Great. Francis, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I think it's important. I think it's worth mentioning that I think from a funding perspective as well, it's about what levers do we have to try to change structurally areas of inequality and improve research culture. And I think the REF gives us that. I think there's consensus on the importance of research culture, what it is, how you measure it, and how you consider it alongside those knowledge and outputs is obviously still up for debate. And what we've done within the REF team is to commission a major piece of work that will look to devise those indicators as to how we do that for people, culture and environment. And we're currently running a series of workshops with a team that go out to the research community to try to co-develop those ways to measure those things. And we appreciate that really needs to be explored carefully and test those, but I think it's the best place to start. And I think we have to accept REF's never going to be perfect, but it will be fair and it will evolve. So I think just looking at it from that structural perspective helps to see what we're trying to achieve there.
Great. And just for my overseas colleagues, so Lynn outlined why REF and what REF is, but the reason why so much emphasis has been placed on it is because it also, not only is it a status thing, in the academic world, but it also does have a direct impact on the funding that institutions get from the government for research generally. And so it's important for a whole variety of reasons, but on the other hand, we don't want to be totally and utterly driven exclusively by what's in the REF and what have you. I just wondered, we've now got to, we've got 2 minutes left, and wondering whether anybody of the panel and the speakers have anything more to say. Or somebody's just wanting to come in. So, no? Kazuku, is there anything you'd like to add, final words or observations? No? Well, I mean, I think what I want to say is I've been somewhat on the sidelines of this, but it has been an absolutely fascinating piece of work. Because the cultural differences are so considerable in many respects, but also, of course, as always, there are similarities and overlaps. And I'd like to also thank all the speakers. I'd also like to thank Kate. So somebody who's been in the background, Catherine Fox, who has been so tremendous in helping all of this to happen and getting us all together and arranging all the meetings and doing everything. So she's done great work. But thank you very much for participating.
Clara?
Yeah.
Oh. Clara?
Yeah.
Midori too. Midori
I was about to say that.
Has done a great job. Yeah. Their collaboration, without their collaboration, we cannot do it. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's both Midori and Kate, and they've been a great team. Well, thank you very much.